Hey there, thanks for tuning in to my Spyderco Paramilitary review. I know there's plenty of these on the internet, but I got the knife and I want to review it anyway. This is a large folding knife. It's an S30V blade with a G10 handle. The overall length, 210mm when the whole knife is open. Blade is just under 3.5 inches at 87mm. Closed, the knife will take up about 122mm down of pocket space. And at its widest point, it's about 40mm across, so 4 centimeters is how much sideways real estate you'll be taking up. That's just about where the spider hole sits, and here sort of makes the widest part of the knife. Blade is a full flat grind, steeply tapering the fairly thick knife stock, 3.5mm stock, to a very keen factory edge. The advantage of full flat grind is it's particularly good at slicing and cutting tasks, which is what your EDC knife is for generally. In the 3 weeks I've been using this knife as a daily blade, made a lot of cardboard and clamshell containers, short work with this knife. The flat grind and the belly of the sort of blade shape make it great work for like heavy cardboard. There's a Christmas tree box that I'll roll cutting in. Of all the knives I've used on cardboard like that, this is probably the easiest one. It really sort of works through the thick fibrous material. You can just rock it on that belly and through it goes. Other knives, pocket knives often come in a hollow grind, like the Crater C33. That really sort of, it binds up and you have to really wedge it through, sort of push it through with your arm strength rather than using the knife's weight and angle to do the work. Very fine tip, and the forward choil sort of grants maximum control for tasks like clamshell packaging. So you use just the tip, like the first part of the knife, to circle around the package while restraining yourself from plunging the knife straight inside, because you've got that extra bit of security and secure grip up closer to the working edge, and therefore closer to the tip. The blade steel is first for me. I've had lots of steels below S30V in terms of so-called quality, and then I've had a few steels above it as well, and yeah, you can sort of see it's definitely a super steel, I suppose. Probably you imagine it would have been the best steel going about 10 years ago. It's still at the upper levels of modern knife steel. Still hasn't been stropped or sharpened, and while it won't shave as readily as it did out the box, it'll still pop hairs, just sort of more on an individual level rather than having a like a full strip come off. So I've done no work to this knife since I've got it, and I've used it a fair bit, so I think that's pretty good. S30V would be dull. Rather VG10 would be dull by this time. So yeah, it is superior to VG10, which is probably my most used knife steel in terms of edge holding. Sharpenability, I guess we'll have to see once I finally get to needing to sharpen it. I'm still really happy with the edge now, so there you go. Even still, there's a little envelope here, still very, very sharp on paper as well. I mean, the hair popping test is good, but I mean, as long as it still glides through paper, that's all I really want. The handle is super comfortable. So this knife size, it's a large knife. That's got a couple of drawbacks, but the significant benefit is having a nice big old handle. Filling the hand more substantially. Like the Delica 4 has a really comfortable handle, and I would have used to have said that this is the most comfortable knife handle. And yeah, it's still obviously super comfortable, but really doesn't. When you sort of grab onto it now, you sort of start to feel sort of some gaps after you've held this one. It's a bit thinner and yeah, just a bit less substantial. And I mean, that's just the price you pay for having such a small and lightweight, well, not a small knife, but a lightweight knife. So yeah, of all the negatives of having a sort of extra large knife, the large sort of bone-shaped handle there is really really pleasant. The scales is G10, sort of medium in terms of traction. It feels fibrous, but just sort of uniform in its fibrosity, almost a bit like fabricy sort of feeling. The handle edges, they're sort of square, but they're not sharp, so there's no comfort issues at all. The swell at the end lock in all but the most gigantic of hands, like those with the real baseball mitts. This bone shape might start acting against you if your big fat finger is sitting on the crest of that. But for me, and I've got reasonable sized hands, probably about what most people have. fits really, really well. Yeah, the forward choil is probably what makes this knife feel like, it's a big a big knife that handles like a small knife. People often say you look at the rat. Flick that bad boy open. You look at the rat, and what you've got here is the maximum, the closest your finger gets to the blade is there, and you've got almost an inch of space, and the Delica is the same. Probably not as much, but yeah, about as much actually. So because of that, you've actually got about as much control over this bigger blade as you get over these smaller blades. And so it's quite an intelligent little design decision. Locking mechanism is a rear compression lock. Let's have a look at that. It's very similar to a liner lock. So here's a rat's liner lock, and this is on the bottom of the knife. You can see the liner sort of, so you open this knife, the liner sort of pushes across and catches the back of the blade tang. On this compression lock though, it pins the tang between the lock bar and this sort of thick stout pillar here. So a little bit like a reverse triad lock from cold steel, whereas this one, the spring just comes across from the handle and just sits on the tang. So it probably does make it a bit more of a stable knife. A very, very strong lock so far. I haven't had any weakness in it. There's no give at all in the blade. With regards to the negatives of this knife, actually no, I'll get onto the action as well, sorry. Until I got the Rat 1, which is just like, feels almost like an auto, just super smooth. This was probably the smoothest knife I've ever used straight out of the box, and once it breaks in, it gets even better. So when you first get it, you can launch it through this nice general size spider hole, a little bit bigger than the Delica one. As you can see, you can launch it really well, and it's really, really fun to play with. So smooth knife due to the bronze phosphor washers that are behind these scales here. So yeah, just regards to there's a lot of positives I've had to say. With regards to negatives, two things I think require mentioning. One, you need to properly consider the general size of the knife. The knife's often branded by most people. Oh, get a Paramilitary 2. That's the one essential EDC knife. So I disagree with that. I think people who are likely to EDC a high quality folding knife are probably going to be EDCing a few other things as well. So you don't just get average Joe carry a knife and nothing else. Pocket real estate becomes valuable for types like myself who carry a comprehensive set of keys, a wallet, usually a torch, and just a couple of other daily items. So having this 4 centimeters across and 111 odd centimeters down does sort of take up a fair bit of a front pocket. So yeah, the general heft makes it a little large for your standard pocket carry. I found that even next to my modestly sized iPhone 5C, the knife takes up some space, and smartphones seem to be getting bigger and bigger, not smaller and smaller. So the 5C's dwarfed now by some of the enormous Samsungs and Apples around. So this space issue might drive away more casual users. Yeah, they'll sort of think, oh, this is a bit large, this is a bit cumbersome. Maybe I'll end up leaving the knife at home, because people who aren't knife people are inclined to do that. They'd rather have their phone and their keys and their everything else. Especially like when you look at the Rat 2 here, it just takes up, it's almost got half the sideways footprint of the knife. So you really do need to start considering size and just suss it out. My solution to the problem's been to rear pocket carry the knife, so put it in my back pocket, either next to my wallet or if I've got nothing else in my other pocket by itself. As possible, because the clip is very strong. It's a really good quality clip. It's yeah, held in place by 3 screws. Excuse me. And yeah, it seems to sort of, as long as I push it against the furthest seam, like so the edge of the pocket's my finger, as long as I push it as far to the edge of the pocket, away from the middle of my arse as I can, I don't find myself sitting on it, so it just goes sideways and it's alright. People with bigger asses might still find they're getting squished, or they're squishing the knife, so that might not be an answer for everyone either. The second minor issue I have is the compression lock sort of biting the hand a bit when you when you first start opening the knife. You do just need to retrain your muscle memory a bit. So say when you first get the knife, you probably have your finger up here and you just be flicking it open like that, and you'll find this comes across, and as it goes through, it sort of nips the fat of your hand a little bit, and you just get a little I just had a little bit of a spot starting to wear there from playing with it all day. So you really kind of need to either leave a bit of air, or just go back a little bit on the knife, and yeah, or you just find yourself just sort of arching your finger over it a little bit so it doesn't get caught. So that's just something you need to sort of figure out how to deal with more than anything. The knife comes in several variations. Changing up the blade being blackwashed and the handle being digi-camo, and sort of alternations of the two seems to be the widely available alternative models. There's a current sprint run of the knife with CPN 110V steel, which sounds like a very flash new steel. There's a big modders market as well for this knife. So you'd be able to get glow-in-the-dark micarta handle. You get all sorts of handles. You can get, but they're obviously not Spyderco made. So you just search eBay, you find all sorts of different pocket clips for it, and handles and lanyard beads to fit this nice larger lanyard hole very well. Yeah, all sorts of things you can do with this knife mod-wise to keep it interesting and fresh. So overall, I'd suggest this knife for anyone looking for a high quality, large, everyday carry knife, which can really do any possible work. Its extra size has benefits as well as a couple of drawbacks, but there isn't anything you probably couldn't really do with this knife. You could push this knife into some fixed blade applications as well. It's just large enough. It's got sort of a blade about as long as, getting up towards a Mora, sort of basic utility fixed blade knife length blade. So the lock's certainly strong. Whilst I wouldn't be batoning with it, I've seen videos of people doing it without any adverse effects. So definitely more of a dual knife. But yeah, you just need to make some inquiries about whether you're happy with something so large. I'd stand by my go-to recommendation of the Spyderco Delica 4. In VG10, for a starter, vanilla sort of everyday carry knife at a reasonable price. If you crave high quality steels and blades and handles and handle materials and stuff, well, I'd probably first start looking at perhaps just a Delica in ZDP 189 if you want something that's, if you want that super steel experience and you still want something a bit lighter, a bit more for pure EDC. I'd go for like a ZDP 189 Delica. Maybe even like a Spyderco Chapter that's got a slightly shorter blade. The blade goes to about there. It's got carbon fiber handles. It's got, I think it might be CTS XHP Carpenter steel. So that's and that's about $200. I paid $240 for this Paramilitary too. So if you want something this size, but perhaps in your first sort of nice knife, I'd probably get something like that. This knife, I would certainly, I'd certainly advocate as part of a collection, even just a small collection. This is a good collection. Look at that, 3 Spydercos to do any job of any different size. Carryable, so on any given day there isn't many items of clothing that you can't sort of slip a Dragonfly 2 into. This is in ZDP 189, another sort of super steel. I've sort of mixed opinions on this one so far. Yeah, or sort of a Delica. So between the 3 of these you get all the work done, but if you wanted just one, I think it's probably, rather than get the big Paramilitary, I'd probably get either the Delica or the Dragonfly if you're just after a first sort of one knife. As for this large knife business, I'd suggest if you want to see how you go with a big knife before you commit to this one, perhaps get a Rat 1 first. It won't be as wide. It probably only goes to about there, but it is as long. So if you want to know how big, this is the Rat 2. So Rat 1's an inflated version of this. So perhaps if you're keen on knowing if you like carrying large knives, because it could be a real switch off for some people. Perhaps get a Rat 1 that's cheap. It'll only cost you about $50 or $60, even in Australia. Carry that for a bit and see if you like it or hate it. In my opinion, blades between 2.5 to 3 inches require no pre-planning. The Para 2 sort of just took me a touch off guard when I first put it in my pocket. But when it is in hand, out of the pocket, and all the carry issues fall away, you'll be no doubt sold on what's perhaps the most comfortable and versatile folding knife in the production market. Tremendously fun to play with. Gadget factor is very, very high. You won't want to put it down once you've picked it up. So go ahead and splurge. If you're going to spend $240 on a knife, and you've already got your basic size covered, Paramilitary 2 is the way to go. It truly is an essential knife for any knife collector, and even an essential knife for even your casual knife people who just want a few different ones to play around with and cycle through. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you on the flip side.